Did you know that a wine brand, Liebestein, which was a South African semi-sweet white blend, is purported to have once been the biggest selling wine brand in the world? Liebestein, the brand, was launched in 1959 by the Stellenbosch Farmers Winery, which was, I guess, a kind of co-op system. And this was a blend of Chenin Blanc, or Steen as it was then called, and the once almost forgotten about cultivar of Clairette Blanche. But by 1964, just 5 years after it was launched, whether it was the biggest single-selling brand in the world or not, it had managed to achieve sales of 31 million litres of wine every single year. And that is just the sort of open-ended wine trivia that you can expect from the Hand Drink Solo Wine channel, where we review curious wines for curious minds. But today's curious wine is Bruce Jack's Ghost in the Machine Skin Contact Clairette Blanche, a wine made from that very same underdog, almost extinct, almost forgotten about everywhere cultivar, although it is in a very different style to anything that Liebestein might have offered you. Up front, it's worth saying that this wine was the second highest scoring wine of all the white wines in the Wine Mag Minority Report 2025 competition, which is essentially a wine competition tasted blind that includes all of the lesser known cultivars, or wines that have less than 5,000 hectares under vine in South Africa. So this was the second highest scoring wine behind a Wildeburg Semillon. This wine was made using fruit from a number of different Clairette Blanche vineyards, and mostly because just to make enough of it, you need a whole bunch of Clairette Blanche vineyards because none of them are particularly big. Most of this fruit comes from the Breedekloof, but there are also little pockets growing in Elgin and in the Swartland that all made it into this bottling. Now that you know what's inside the bottle, it's the outside of the bottle that is absolute glorious chaos. Because in the Ghost in the Machine range, every single bottling has not one, but two wine labels, which are applied on top of one another with ever varying positions, which means that not a single bottling looks identical, because in every single one, the label will be in a slightly different position. And this is one of those bottles that you can sit and stare at for hours before you even get round to opening it. It really is part art piece, part logistical nightmare. But I guess that's kind of on brand for a range like Ghost in the Machine that thrives on subversion. And if you're wondering what kind of subversion are you talking about, Han? Well, their very first wine, which was released in 2021, was a blend of Malbec and Viognier, which sounds disgusting but managed to be delicious. So it is that these wines seem to mock convention while also mastering their craft. It's like punk rock that's being played by jazz nerds. At this point, you'd be justified in leveling the critique at me that, having told you that the cultivar was almost forgotten, I then never really explained it. So here's a little bit of background on Clairette Blanche. At one point, it was supremely widely planted in France, especially in the Rhône. But over the last couple of decades, it's really dwindled down to a rather minuscule 2,000 hectares. In South Africa, we used to have vineyards dotted all over the place, but in the last 5 years, we've gone from a not dominant 300 hectares down to roughly 150 hectares. So this grape is kind of almost extinct in South Africa, and you'd think it would just disappear like a sad moth when the last light goes out. But then something remarkable happened. In the Wine Mag Minority Report for 2025, the cultivar of Clairette Blanche managed to nab 2 spots in the top 10 or 11 wines. One was the second highest, this wine, and the other was another Clairette Blanche by Bruce Jack, the off-the-charts Clairette Blanche, which managed to not only score in the kind of top 10 zone of the competition, but was also the best value wine of the entire competition. So could it be that this kind of quality coming out of this kind of cultivar is the very first seed in an epic Clairette Blanche revival? I mean, it's unlikely, but we can live in hope. Now, when we get to give this guy a sniff, well, it is a lovely mix of gentle fruit, florals, a hint of kind of perfumed talc, even though talc itself is odorless, so perhaps I shouldn't have mentioned talc at all. The mixture is definitely a sense of a mineral sweetness, a fruit sweetness, and a floral sweetness all moving together. So let's give it a sip and see what it's like on the palate. Well, this is one of the defining characteristics of Clairette Blanche, is a really textured, waxy feel on the palate. And this is here in spades. In fact, there was a little bit of beeswax aroma on the nose as well, but you actually feel that waxiness, even though there is not actual beeswax in the wine. You feel it on the palate, so that when you taste a nectarine note or a peach note like you do here, it can feel like you're chewing on the wine, and that really is one of the joys of Clairette Blanche. But then there's also a quite interesting little bit of spiciness, not in the sense of cloves or pepper or nutmeg, but rather in the sense that when you perhaps spray a little bit of citrus essential oil on your tongue, like when you fold an orange wine and squirt that oil onto your tongue, it's got a slight spiciness to it. Well, you get that in the wine. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and squirt citrus oil onto your tongue. And what of the acidity, you might ask? Clairette Blanche is not known for its soaring acidity, but if you're a wine sleuth that likes to pick up clues from the label, you'll see that this is a 12% wine, which means that the Bruce Jack winemaking team definitely picked it a little earlier. And so even though the cultivar itself might not have soaring acidity, there's enough freshness and brightness and texture to it to make it feel quite vibrant. So this wine is definitely not for glugging or smashing by the poolside. Rather, it's a wine that rewards a little bit of contemplation and curiosity as you look within yourself and within the wine. Put differently, I think it's something that invites thought and rewards curiosity. So I'll leave you with the job of deciding Clairette Blanche's verdict. Should it go gently into that good night, or are we on the brink of a revival? And to help you make your decision, I have left links to 2 videos, one of which talks about Clairette Blanche on a global scale, and the other of which explores a Swartland Clairette Blanche made by Whiteman and Sons.